Hey there, Dr. Anna Maria Helt, herbalist and microbiologist. Welcome to Monday's Mushroom. I think we're at episode 14 at this point. You're not seeing me. You're in the greenhouse seeing a little mushroom here that has cropped up over the past maybe 18 hours or so. That is showing up in the bed. So this is colloquially called an Inky cap mushroom. So Inky caps, the most famous one is the shaggy mane, Coprinus comatus. Comatus means edible, and in that case it is edible. It's a bigger mushroom than this one. There's another famous so-called Inky cap mushroom called Coprinopsis atramentaria, and that is the alcohol inky cap. That one is edible, but it becomes toxic if you ingest it within a few days of having alcohol. There's an alkaloid in it called coprin that has a not so great reaction with the alcohol in the liver, or alcohol metabolites in the liver, that can cause you problems. And so this is a different species of inky cap. I'll come back to that little guy in a second. There are some others growing in here. So here is another one. And you can see the patches on the cap, especially on this one here. Look at that cutie. So these guys had initially been growing inside of a membrane called the universal veil, kind of similar to some amanitas. And then when the mushroom breaks out of that membrane, you're left with veil remnants on the cap. So that's what those patchy white things are. So Inky caps used to all be in the Coprinus genus, Coprinus. If you have the Giganto guidebook, Mushrooms Demystified, from David Aurora. Here we go. Let's pull this guy up again. So again, look at the gills. If you have Mushrooms Demystified from David Aurora, you will see these all listed under the Coprinus genus. But due to genetic analyses, they've been broken up into multiple genera. So there's Coprinus, Coprinopsis, Parasola, and one other one that I'm not remembering. This is likely a Coprinopsis or Parasola mushroom. But they're all generally called Inky caps because as their spores mature, let's take a look at the other ones again. There they are. As their spores mature, the edge of this cap will start to deliquiesce, which is a fancy word meaning that it will auto-digest. So it'll start on this edge here as the black spores in this mushroom will start to degrade. And you can already see that it's kind of dark near the edge of the edge of the cap there, those dark spores. The edge of the cap will start to degrade and turn into black goo, and it'll curl up, which makes it easier for the spores to be dispersed. So that's why they're called Inky cap. They kind of melt. And if you try to take these guys home, either to eat in the case of shaggy mane, for instance, or to maybe make a spore print out of, you might not make it home before these things completely decompose. And so what I'll do is come back a little later today and see if we can catch them deliquiescing or turning into black slime. Now, not all black slimy mushrooms, not all mushrooms that deliquiesce are actually Inky caps. In terms of being related to them, they can be in a completely different mushroom family than these mushrooms here. And so it used to be that they were all thought to be related, but in fact they're not. Now, I don't know if you can see the stuff on the wood behind this mushroom. Those were Inky caps that deliquiesced a few days ago. Let me get this a little bit closer here to show you that. So you can actually see essentially a spore print on the side of the wood. Some residual black slime here, in this case from the mushrooms that deliquiesced last week. So like I said, I'm going to come back in here later this afternoon as it warms up in here, and we'll see these guys do their thing. Now, one more thing before we come back is some folks might freak out having these guys growing in their greenhouse. Like, oh my gosh, there's strange mushrooms growing near my vegetables. Is it going to make my vegetables bad? No, this is actually great. The actual fungal organism itself is living underneath the mulch here, the mycelium. This, what we're looking at, is just the sex part. It's how it sends its spores off to make new fungi. So when you see these, it means you've got the fungus in the dirt here, in the organic matter, degrading, breaking down, or basically eating dead organic matter and converting it back into nutrients. So this is actually really good for the soil. Now, if you've got these guys growing in your yard, if you have a garden and they're growing outside and you've got dogs or little ones running around and you're concerned about them sticking it in their mouth, you can always just pop off these fruiting bodies and get rid of them. But I like to see mushrooms showing up in my greenhouse and in my garden because it is good for the soil. So we'll be back in a little bit and watch these guys deliquiesce. Here we are, not even a half an hour later, and you can see these are already starting to break down as it gets warm in here. These are not as inky as some of the other inky caps that I've met before, but they do indeed have black spores and will ultimately turn into black slime. Here is the other one here. So you can see the cap margin really breaking up there. So we'll just be nerds and follow these guys as they deliquiesce, as they break down to release their spores today. Here we are, about an hour and a half to 2 hours later, and you can see that this mushroom is auto-digesting or deliquiescing as its spores are mature and ready to go. And then here is the one that was up against the wood, completely breaking down, turning black. This one's not quite as slimy as some inky caps that I've seen, but you're seeing a really great example here of how inky caps operate. So the edge of the cap is turning up. That allows for better wind dispersal of the spores, although some people think insects may be possibly involved as well. If this black gooey stuff sticks to them, then they could effectively portage those mushroom spores or seeds elsewhere. So there you go, some little greenhouse inky caps for our Mushroom Monday. Thanks for tuning in.